So everybody loves CSI. CSI is really fun to watch, but is it realistic? Let's find out. Crime scene investigation is based upon a team of investigators that work together, and they're responsible for recognizing, documenting, and collecting evidence. The whole purpose of collecting that evidence is to help recreate a picture of exactly what happened during the crime. So they have to be very, very specific. Now, we learned from the O.J. Simpson trial that the investigators did not collect their evidence properly. They mishandled it, and then plus it was contaminated. So it needs to be able to hold up in court. So everything that is involved in crime scene investigation is based upon the principle of exchange. We learned about this from Edmund Locard, and he's the person that discovered that there's a physical transfer of materials like hair, fibers, blood, and skin whenever two people come in contact. Now, the longer or more intense the contact between two people, the greater the amount of trace evidence is present. So if it's some form of a violent crime that was committed between one person towards another, there should be quite a bit of trace evidence that could be found. It's the job of the forensic examiner to recognize, collect, and analyze this trace evidence in order to help solve crimes. So let's say we go into a crime scene. The first step is identification of evidence. What is the substance or object that has been collected as evidence? Let's say that we find a cartridge casing and bullets. What we want to try and do is collect as much information as possible so that way we can analyze that bullet. So we probably would ask questions like, what is the caliber? Can lands and grooves be found on the bullet? Those are the striations and the markings that are created when the bullet is fired from the pistol. So all of this information could help us to identify that the bullet is a .357 caliber fired from a Smith & Wesson. Then we would be able to take that information and attempt to match it with the firearm that actually committed the crime. So when we're analyzing that evidence, the idea is to determine as much as possible. How unique is this piece of evidence? The more unique it is, the higher the probability that we would be able to determine who committed the crime. So samples of similar substances or objects are obtained, and the likelihood of finding a matching object is determined. For example, we might be looking at some fabric. We might have fabric that's left at a crime scene in a piece of clothing. We can analyze that fabric and determine exactly which batch it was made from and exactly where it was sold, and from there might be able to track down where the perpetrator is exactly from. So going back to the bullet comparison idea, if the marks found on the bullet can be found to only match the marks fired from the same firearm, then there's a high probability that the bullet was fired from that specific gun. So the idea with evidence collection is to keep it, or to prevent it from being contaminated. So that way we can use it in a court of law.